G'day guys, welcome to the Pumps on Property show. Now, I once heard a quote which is, I can't even remember it.
Great start to the podcast, Benny.
And it was kind of about this guy talking about that for every successful person that he'd met, that successful person had always had support and was always standing on the shoulders of giants. And I think it is so true because sometimes it's so easy. And I used to do this myself when I used to look at other people and aspire to have what they had or to be like them. And it's just so difficult to do that because we're not someone else and we are ourselves. And it's so disjointed when you look at someone's life and you just see the highlights like unfortunately we do on Insta every day. And it's like, that's not the reality of that person's world. It's the best part of it. And you're comparing your worst mindset and day versus the best life someone else is showing you that they're leading.
Exactly. And you can think about yourself when you use social media. Like, you know, for example, I was sick a couple of weeks ago and Ben was sick last week and we barely put anything up on the social media and things like that. Like when you feel crap, you don't feel like doing much and that's fine. That's completely fine. But, you know, it is important to make sure that you're not benchmarking yourself against these other people that either have had a lot more experience or have had the right mentors or are in the prime of their lives.
And why I wanted to frame the start of this podcast around that is because every story has a story. In fact, everyone's journey has hundreds and thousands of moments that create who they are. And every destiny and every great success that you see around you is a result of so much hard work, so much trade-off, as well as so many incredible life-changing experiences. And, you know, that's what we wanted to share today. Some of the things that have shaped Simon and I and have got us to this point. And, you know, some of the things that are happening now will be the things that take us to the next point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So we're going to be telling a few stories about things that have happened in our lives that may seem small, but to us, they had such a major impact on who we are today and the decisions that we make today as well. So you get a little bit of an inside story onto some of the things that have helped us become the people that we are today. And, you know, I'm pretty proud of both of us, you know, like I'm a super optimistic guy and I'm a very grateful person. I never ever talk down to myself and pretty excited to share some stories with you
I'm
today.
optimistic, but unfortunately I do have negative self-chatter like a heap of you guys would as well. And that's just something that I realise that most humans have. Like Simon, my mate Mickey Boyle, Macca and Lisa are really the only people in my life that I've met that actually Mickey has negative chatter, but he doesn't show the world that chatter.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, that's not the norm. And so whether you're, you know, blessed like Simon to have a clean mind or you're like me and you have a dirty one, it's either way, like you can still succeed and you can still figure out your stuff and you can still move past your own ego and on to creating the life that you really want.
Yeah. So these aren't in chronological order or anything like that, guys. So we just kind of wrote down a few things after putting a bit of thought to it.
It's funny you say that. It's the difference between us, bro. Mine's in chronological order.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course it is. It's like it's a story of like my journey and it's like where did it start until now. But like Simon's is more like cool stuff that's been going down.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but sweet. So, well, if yours is in chronological order, then why don't we start with the first thing that you feel as though has impacted your life?
Sure.
Somebody was just hijacking a car out in Ben Street. We found out it's a ghetto now. He almost got rolled this morning on a beach walk.
Yeah, some dude. I'm walking around the beach with Linda, one of our new clients. She's actually the first client we've worked with that works for the UN, which is epic. Like,
yeah, she's really cool.
We've got to the top now. We're working with people from the UN. She goes into hostile zones and solves problems for people, which is really crazy. But walking along the beach and some dude obviously was having a bad day and was getting up in mine and her grills. I'm lucky for a 5'2" woman. She's so tough and she looked the guy in the eye when he asked her where she's from and, you know, he had a few issues or whatever and she just walked straight up into his face and was like, fuck off, but in a really friendly, beautiful way. And it was like so motivating for me. I was like standing next to her, pretending to be like strong, but really freaking the hell out because I thought we were both going to get bashed. I'm like, it's normally a nice place where I live, but
that's a weird thing to happen. When you told me, I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Doesn't happen. Anyways, sidetrack, back to your first story.
Yeah, so the first time that not the first time, but one of the times that I remember, like realizing, I think for me, like, because where I grew up on the south side of Sydney was an absolutely epic place, but a lot of the people that were living there at that time were, you know, doing the normal thing that I'm obviously doing now, raising families, working jobs, running businesses. But at 19 years of age, when I went to Europe on this trip with 3 of my best mates, I hadn't really seen anything outside of that little bubble, which is the Sutherland Shire or the Shire. And for me, getting outside of that environment at 19 and going to places like the French Riviera and Italy and France, or different parts of France, Germany, Austria, like seeing something so different than I'd ever seen was just like a shot in the arm. It wasn't necessarily what I saw or what I did. It was more, hey, there's an alternative way of living. And these Europeans sort of seem to get it, like the siestas, the working 4-day weeks, the, you know, working hard but having incredible family values and friends, and like these full lives outside of just like the grind that we'd sort of grown up with in our area.
And when you get really sheltered, especially when you're growing up, and if you live in a community like we lived in, like our dad suffers anxiety and he's never travelled. He hasn't travelled for 30 years now on a plane. So growing up, we never went on overseas holidays. We would only ever go to the beach. So we didn't really get much cultural exposure, by the way.
And like the first stop off the plane was in Bali. That was the layover that we decided to do. And just like Bali 15 years ago was like a 19-year-old's playground. Like it was a wild place still, and we were just wild kids, and it was like a real fun time. And I think that was just such a meaningful thing for me. Like I remember sitting underneath the Eiffel Tower, you know, and I'd been on a pretty big like drinking bender for about 6 weeks before that point, so I don't know if what I saw was in my head or if it was in reality. But like I was sitting under there one night, it was like late, and I was just looking up at the tower and looking up at the stars, and I just felt like there was a weird like sort of out of body moment for me where it looked like my path was just super clear and I could see my future, and I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, but I knew that I was going to have a big impact and help a lot of people. And it became clear from that point, and I've had this confidence inside me since then that everything was going to work out, you know what I mean? And
beautiful.
That's like the cool shit that you get from or from big trips or from climbing a mountain, that perspective that there is something bigger than just yourself looking up for you.
Taking yourself out of your comfort zone and being exposed to just the rawness of the world.
It was epic. It was a game-changing experience. Coming back, I didn't know what to do, but I did stop drinking for a while. I started to train. I let go of some of my friends and like really made friends, like deeper relationships with some of the other boys. I actually decided to move to Queensland to come and try uni, and I signed up for uni. Like it just changed my entire path, like overnight. I just didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I had to change what I was doing, which was just getting smashed every weekend and playing soccer, you know what I mean?
For sure. No, that's amazing, bro. One of the things, I guess, for myself that really started to change the way that I looked at the world, kind of growing up, same sort of lifestyle, you know, quite sheltered and things like that, and not much exposure, but I guess something that really opened my eyes and taught me about money a lot, which really helped me change my motivation and change my path, because before reading this book, I didn't really have a plan. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I tried a few different things here and there, but I didn't feel as though I had a purpose or I had a direction that I needed to be following. And I was young at the time, so it didn't matter. And
who does? Like...
Yeah. And I had older siblings and mentors and things like that were just like, it's okay to be exactly where you are right now. So that really helped. But reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad was actually a massive game changer for me. I think I read it when I was about 20, 21 years of age.
That's a good time to read it, eh?
Yeah, it really was, because at the time, like I knew about saving and I knew about money, but I didn't know about investing. You know, I had always grown up in a family where it was like, you know, go to school, get a good education, you know, build up your skills, save your money away, get a great job. So it was kind of the stock standard way. You know, my dad was a business owner and he was always about just, you know, getting a good job, getting a good education. And then reading this book and just it completely warped my mind to go, wait a minute, I don't need to work for money.
Yeah,
in a
money
way,
should work for me.
In a way, like that's essentially what Robert Kiyosaki talks about in the book, like making money work for you instead of you having to work for money. And I just remember finishing the last chapter in the book, closing it, and just kind of like throwing the book across my room and just going, why wasn't I given that book at 16? Why did my year 10 English teacher give me the story of Tom Brennan in grade 10 and not give me fucking Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Yeah. I'm glad. Thanks for teaching us how to do algebra, guys, when you could have gave us Rich Dad Poor Dad in maths and we could have learnt how to like do interest-only homelands. Seriously, like it completely changes. So from that moment, I changed my perspective on the way that I needed to approach the world, and it was majorly empowering moment in my life to just go, oh, this is epic. I don't have to do what everybody does, you know, like, and I've always kind of been that person that, you know, looks outside the box or tries to figure out different ways about doing things rather than just following the norm. You know, I'm not a normal kind of guy. Like I'll try different things. So reading this book, it was just like, perfect. This is exactly what I needed, especially at that point in my life where I was kind of coming off that just, you know, young teenage age into sort of learning a bit more about myself and figuring out who I was. So it was just perfect timing for me to read that book. I love it. Yeah, I read it at 23 as well. I remember I picked it up and was just obsessed with it, and I was like into it, and one of my wife's best friends was having a party down in Brisbane. It was like a pool party. Everyone was just getting smashed, and at that stage of life I normally would be too. And I was so into this book that I went to this party, pulled out a recliner in the middle of the party and just read it in the sun and finished it while I was there, and people were just like, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm loving this book. Everyone's getting messy around me, and like Lisa's like, that was the worst behaviour. Imagine I did that with your friends. I'm like, this book has changed our life, and it has. Like that was the start, but I didn't start earning money for another 2.5 years after that because I was still at uni, and it took time. Like it's taken till now to figure out some stuff, and we're still figuring it out. So the next one for me, like my second one, was going to university. So same as Simon, like I didn't know really what I wanted to do at uni, but I was interested in business. I was really, really interested in sustainability, which I still am, and really, really interested in helping people, which I found through health promotion. Health promotion is kind of like community development. So I was working for like the Queensland government and Oxfam when I was at uni in their intern programs to like, that's what I thought I was going to be doing. Like that's how I thought I was going to save the world, was like through contributing. And then I went into these organizations and I realized everyone in them is playing small that I met, and every one of them is shitting themselves because they have no true skill sets that are valuable to the marketplace in the way that I wanted to have them, and they don't have financial freedom, so they're worried about their jobs constantly being taken from them. And I said, you can't, in my world, in my limited view of the world, and this is like 10 years ago, I was like, you can't change the world unless you've changed your own position. And so I went, I'm going to go get financially free after reading that book, and then I'll spend the whole second half of my life helping people, which I'm so grateful that I feel like I'm getting to do this already through podcasts and stuff.
That's amazing.
But I met two people. One was Lily, and she just changed my life because I didn't have very good self-confidence at that stage of my life. Like it was all ego and bravado. Like I was in good shape. Like I was obviously good at talking. I had amazing friends and family around me, but I just didn't have this underlying confidence in myself. And now that I look back, that was just transferred from mum and dad not having confidence in themselves. It wasn't that I don't feel that. It was just that I learned that behavior to be like hard on myself and guilty and like critical, and it was like, that's them. Like that's not me or Simon at all. And so like we're so blessed that we now know that, but at the time I didn't. And this lady just looked at me differently. Like she everything I did she thought was fucking amazing, and I was just like, it was the first person that was like, oh my God, great. Like I did 10 courses with this lady and her partner Jane, who was amazing too, and they just gave me HDs because they liked me. I swear to God, my work wasn't any better. They just liked how I was.
That's how uni is sometimes, isn't it?
Fuck, that's how life is, bro.
Yeah, create rapport and then good things happen.
And this lady Lily just like had my back. I was rocking up into class with bare feet and doing these presentations where I was playing music and getting the whole class to like write on their wristbands what they're going to change in their life that week and shit. Yeah, okay. I was just wild. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. It was like that young blood, just try shit and see what sticks. And it was like, I'm so grateful. And then I met another guy who was the CEO of the Innovation Center up here, and he got me into his program where I got to go and with students from all over the world to do this Harvard and MIT Business School week training paid for by the uni. And I met kids, like some smart kids from all over the world that were already running businesses. And I just like his confidence in me, like he saw who I could be before I knew I could be it. And he like took me under his wing, and he was my first proper mentor. I was like with him every single week. We talked for 3 years. He introduced me to hundreds of business people. He helped me establish my first business. When I set up this one, I was always going back to him and going, what do you think about this and that? Like, he changed my life. And then, you know, when things started to get good, I didn't see him and busy with family. I actually caught up with him recently, and it was just like, I was just crying. I was just like, fuck, man, you saw me. Like, yeah. Sometimes that's all you need, like someone to see you. Yeah, yeah. It was a big deal for me. It's a
beautiful thing. You know, like that kind of reminds me of what you did for me. You know, I've always found myself in every single job that I've ever done. I've always ended up in some sort of managerial role, and I've always had the people that I've been working for that have seen something in me and but never told me about it. I never had a teacher. I never had a uni teacher. I never had a boss necessarily tell me about why they would choose me over other people or anything like that until Ben, really. And you know, because Ben moved up to the Sunshine Coast when I was 12 or 13. Yeah. So like, you know, we didn't obviously have a decent relationship before then, because when you're, you know, 18 years old and your little brother's 12 years old, it's not, you know, the coolest guy to be hanging around. But, you know, as I grew up and we got to spend more time together, we actually went traveling over in America and had an amazing trip. And when I got back from America, I did a couple of extra weeks, and Ben did. He given me a call and just said, it's time, like we need to do this together. Like I can't think of anybody that I would rather, you know, move forward in my life with than you. And he's like, I saw something in you over in America, and at that point in my life, I still didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to move into the corporate world, and then
remember you were looking at like RP Data jobs and shit? Yeah.
I actually went to an interview at RP Data, and I told Ben, and he's like, mustn't have been thinking, he's like, nah, fuck those guys. In hindsight.
I love the data. I remember the culture.
I walked into the office and
no disrespect at all. Like, I love what they do, and they provide the most value in Australia. No disrespect. He
didn't even remember when I told him about it later on. You know, this was years and years and years ago anyway. But, you know, it's so nice to have that in your life. And I've talked to friends who have had teachers do it, or bosses do it, or mentors do it. But if somebody's listening to this right now and there's somebody in your life that, you know, you've been thinking about that's amazing and you haven't told them, tell them. You know, you always tell your, you know, your friends and family members and things like that about a person who's great, but it never ends up getting to the person who is actually great. Yeah. Like, so, you know, don't worry about those little insecurities that you have about, you know, fluffing up somebody else's ego. Like, it's important for people to know this, because that might just be that thing that pushes them over the edge to commit to doing what they're meant to be doing.
I was watching that Tony Robbins after you mentioned it to me again, the I'm Not Your Guru. And there's this point in it, and my wife's been reading a book at the moment on the same thing, where he gets that guy who's got like the good looking girlfriend in it, and like she's the dominant one and he's the passive one, and you know, his dad was the passive one in his relationship, and his mum was really, really dominant on his dad, so his dad was really dominant on him. And I've been thinking about this a lot for the last 6-7 years as a parent. I want my children to feel 100% themselves by the time they reach adulthood. And my job isn't to squash them, to take away their power, to control them, to like put pressure on them, to put all of my bullshit insecurities onto them. My job is to let them find themselves, be themselves, and become strong. Wayne Dwyer talks about it as well, and that's where I learned it. He's like, your job isn't to parent your children, it's to protect your children, but it's to let them be who they're supposed to be. And it's like the whole world is filled with people transferring their own insecurities onto other people and trying to control and suppress, and your boss is pushing you down, or
Society.
your co-worker. Society, man. Society.
Into the world reference there,
Into
guys.
the world, one of our faves. But like, it's society.
It's a sick culture.
It's a sick culture. It's just, the world is so much better when you raise people up. And as Simon said, like, my whole big loop there to get back onto that is the fact that when you tell someone how you openly feel and that brings that person up, everyone wins.
For sure. Now, one of the other things that is kind of a game changer for me as well, and this kind of came within a couple of years after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad as well, was my mum's kind of first investment property. It wasn't meant to be an investment property, but it turned into one pretty quickly. So she bought a unit in Cronulla, just a little 3-bedroom unit. It was on a main street even as well, so it wasn't the highest quality unit that you could get in the area. But I think it was 2012, 2013 that she bought it. And then...
Man, I love that unit.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
That was funny. So I grew up in our family house in Engadine, spent, basically my whole life there. And then I went away to Europe when I was 20, and I came back to a new house. It was such a weird situation, but I was stoked at the time because I didn't have to do the move. And you can imagine a family of 6 living in the same house for 15, 16 years. There was a whole bunch of shit. Our parents were like hoarders at the time as well. So I was so glad to get out of the move. But coming back and moving into this place, my mum, once she bought it, it was completely unrenovated. It hadn't been touched in over probably 20 years. And she completely gutted the joint.
Was it clean when you got back, or was it still...
No, it was completely done.
So
it was amazing. It was amazing. And she completely gutted the whole 3-bedroom unit. She added another bathroom. She rejigged the floor plan a little bit and turned it into this beautiful house. And then a few years had gone by. Mum's decided to move up to the Sunshine Coast to be closer to Ben and Crystal and the grandkids, and she's decided to rent out the unit, but then she wanted to buy up here on the Sunshine Coast, so she's put it on the market. Now, Mum bought this place for $600,000 in 2013. She renovated, I think she over-capitalised on the renovation, but it didn't end up mattering. I think she spent about $150,000 on a little 3-bed unit as a renovation. So you can imagine how epic it was by the end of it. And then she sold it in 2016, 2016, just before the turnaround in Sydney, for $1.2 million. So, she's made...
Tax-free, $500K, like, overnight.
Exactly. So I've just, gone, oh, Robert Kiyosaki wasn't bullshitting. You can do this. And that was the penny that had dropped for me. And from that point, I've kind of decided to learn a little bit more about investing and checked out some books and things like that. But at the time was, just still living the life, still didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. But that lesson from Mum was amazing, to know how much money you can do it. And it taught me the value of timing as well. After I learned a bit about it, taught me the value of manufacturing your own value rather than paying premiums to have beautiful products. So, those types of lessons have turned me into the person and the investor that I am today, which is more active, willing to get a bit more involved, take matters into my own hands, and hopefully start turning some profit.
I'm still waiting for my $600K payday.
Yeah.
It's awesome, man. Like, I love seeing Mum do that, and it was a really fun place for us to go holiday as well, like just walking distance to the point and everything else, which is sick. you know, my third one was when I bought my first investment property. I bought it with my mates. I remember like settling on it and going down to Bondi Beach that night, which was on like the Wednesday, and having a beer with the boys and talking about how we're going to build this property empire and take over the world and all be millionaires by the time we're 30 and do it all together. And it was just like this, we're doing it. Like,
so sick.
That's what it felt like. It felt like at 24, no one else we knew had bought a property at all. Like none of the older boys, none of the younger guys.
No parents were investors either.
None of the parents. I didn't know a single parent with a single investment. And I didn't know his uncle at that time.
Oh, right.
And it was like, yes, we're on our way. And then that Friday night and Saturday night, we went out and celebrated with all the boys, and we were just like, we've made it. Like,
yeah.
I really felt like at that time that I was just like a millionaire already.
It gave you the confidence.
And it was just an incredible experience. Like a whole lot of stuff happened, and it was just really cool. But I'll never forget that moment of just like, that feeling that you get from doing what you're supposed to be doing. And it sparked a whole passion on property for me, which obviously has led to this life that we get to live now.
For sure. No, that's epic, dude. And it started.
Yeah.
Property empire. Like, you know, Macca's since then's bought, I think, a few properties. Purcell's bought another one property, and you've obviously done 13. So
I think Macca's bought 4 now, and I think Percy's at 5.
Okay.
So everyone's like on their way all individually now. I remember like I saved my deposit for that property. I went and spent it on a party trip in America with Macca. Like had to save it again, saved it again, bought the property, and then Dad was like, oh, I was going to give you $10,000 towards your first property. And I'm like, oh, I've already bought it. And he's like, that's cool. And then 4 months later, I'm like, hey, can I grab that 10 grand? And he's like, no. And I'm like, I've just bought a second property, but I need that 10 grand. And he's like, it wasn't for a second property. And I'm like, you said that you're going to give it to me, man. And so Dad helped me buy the second property with that 10K. And he was like not happy because I was like already moving past where they'd got to in their lifetime.
We all, like, that was one amazing thing that Dad did for all of us, but none of us except our sister Kylie used it on our first property. I used mine on a party trip.
Oh, really?
As well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I've never told Dad that I used it on a party trip.
Thanks, Dad. Legend. I'll do the same thing for my kids.
Oh, for sure. Now, the third thing for me, and it kind of leads into my fourth thing as well, they're kind of together, was the move to Queensland, move to the Sunshine Coast from Sydney. Hands down is the best thing that happened to me. As you know, as we've been saying, we grew up in this small town. It's called the Shire in Sydney.
This small town, you might have heard of it. It's called Sydney.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the Shire. Well, it felt like Engadine felt like a small town. And
our mates up here go back down there, and they're like, "Oh, I get it. That's just the Shire. That's just the sunny coast of Sydney."
Yeah, it really is.
Right.
It's really like the sunny coast of Sydney, but.
It just felt like a small town.
It's called the Shire because it's like the Shire from the Lord of the Rings. Like it's so sheltered. You've got to go over a bridge to get to it. It's crazy. It's an awesome place. I love it, and I love growing up there, and I love going to school there, and I love all of my friends from down there, and you know, it's always going to have a place in my heart. But moving to Queensland gave me this ability to become a new person, and not that I necessarily thought about this at the time. It's only after reflection that I've kind of realized how big of an impact that move actually had on me. But leaving the box that I was in Sydney, and being able to come up here and just completely create a new life for myself, create new friendships, new connections, create a completely new adventure for myself is amazing. And I'm so blessed for the opportunity and so grateful for the opportunity to come up here and work with you. And, you know, in time, it's made me realize it was the best decision I've ever made, without a doubt. And the relationships that I've got up here, like the friendship group that we've got up here now, is just unbelievable and second to none. So that was hands down one of the most powerful things that I had. And then the fourth thing, moving up to Queensland and finding these new friendship groups and hanging out with a few different people, I started to actually learn about myself. And I think this along with moving up to Queensland kind of coincided together, because they're the two biggest things that I've done, like actually learning to meditate, actually learning about myself and understanding that you can't find happiness in the external world. You can only find happiness within yourself. And if you can focus on yourself, and if you can focus on finding that peace within, then you're going to ooze that out into the world, and you're going to be in flow, and the universe is going to give you anything that you desire. And this is just something that's completely changed my life, and it's allowed me to achieve all the things that I've achieved, like buying a few properties, like meeting the love of my life, like doing all of these amazing things that are going to set myself up for the future. I was forced to realize up here by throwing myself out of my comfort zone, by throwing myself into a new environment. I searched within. I had friends like you and Nick and these people in my life that taught me these different things that I could do in order to search within and find this peace. And yeah, just nowadays I'm just so grateful. Like, it's now a daily practice, meditation, gratitude, all of these different things that I've incorporated, because I've realized how powerful that is. And if you can control what's going on in here, and you can, be aware of the emotions that come up and deal with them as they come up, and then put them to the right places, and harness emotions as well. Like, if I'm feeling down or if I'm feeling bad, getting to a point where I can harness emotion to bring joy, to bring happiness, to bring gratitude to my life, means that those down times are so insignificant and so small now. They only last, a couple of hours or a couple of days, rather than, attaching onto that and it becoming something that it isn't, because, the only thing that's real is right now. Completely. The moment that you're experiencing in any given moment. So understanding that and letting go of all that other bullshit that everybody attaches onto. Yeah, two of the most amazing things. So moving to Queensland and then being able to find these people in my life that showed me the path toward this is just epic.
Just love that, bro. Like, how epic is our life? Like, getting to have these conversations and get paid for it. It's like, fuck. I remember when I was 19, I went searching when I came back from Europe, and one of the quotes, it's so funny that you say that, from the Buddha, is like, the future is yet to come, the past is behind, the only moment you can truly control is the present, so enjoy this, like, present day or whatever. And it's like, it was written on my wall, which mum and dad had to repaint when they sold their house. I think they did.
That wall was hilarious. Yeah. That's sick.
There was also some other shit in there, like
our sister Crystal. She moved into Ben's room when he moved out, but she left all these motivational quotes on there because she thought it was cool.
I thought it was cool. I had like my full room set up feng shui style, and it was like all these little pockets, and I was loving it. But it's so weird that, like, in a lifetime, like, you can find it, you can lose it, you can re-find it, and then when you actually discover who you are and what you're supposed to be here to do, everything else clears away. Like, one of my favorite quotes of all time is by, who's it? Winston Churchill, and he's like, the man in the arena. Like, it wasn't comfortable for Simon to leave all of his friends and family in Sydney to come to Queensland. It wasn't fucking comfortable when Simon was working 60 hours a week with me next to him every single call, going, why the fuck did you say that? Why did you do that? Do this, try that. Like, that is super uncomfortable. It wasn't comfortable when I missed my targets or Simon missed ours, and because it's our own business, there's nowhere to hide and there's nowhere to run from it. And there's nowhere to hide when you have a mental breakdown and you're still responsible for, like, your own destiny at the same time. There's nowhere to, like, go recover. You've just got to confront it. But by both of us stepping into it through gratitude, through meditation for Simon, or yoga for me, like, things change, like, so slowly that you don't even notice that you are exactly who you always were, or a brand new person down the line, that it's just so subtle. And then it's like, wow, like, it's so cool, like, this life. And that's why property is important. Like, if you can create a passive income, you can spend all of your time doing what you're actually supposed to be here to do, not just cruise through and, like, fucking burn 30 years, which is so easy to do.
It seems like, the system that is built, to me, I look at it now with this awareness, it seems like a jail sentence. Like, it really does, unless you can completely control exactly what you want to do. Like, being forced to do something, just, where's our free will in that?
I talked to Linda this morning about the secret life of real estate and banking book. And in one of the chapters, the reason property is so expensive is because when people first rocked up to America and there was no land ownership and you could just walk to your next door neighbors, plot it out, and that was yours, everyone was making bank. And so they had a conversation. This is documented, that they decided, what will we set the land values at in America? And they said, well, if we can get them at 20 times the value of an average annual salary, we'll have people in slavery for 20 years until they own it, before they can do anything else, which means we'll have good little employees for our industrial system. Like, that makes me fucking sick. That is the system that we're in. So it wasn't cool anymore to have slaves, or it wasn't like socially acceptable. And those guys were smart and could see that people were going to clue onto this pretty soon. So they created like a financial slavery, which most people don't understand. This is why, like, I recognized this when I was 24 and working for these organizations, and I went, I need to get out of the system to actually have the most meaningful impact on the system. And I'm not out of it. I'm still absolutely loving every part of it and grateful for it. But it's like, there's multiple ways to live, not just in service to a home loan for 30 years until you feel safe enough to do something else.
And the norm isn't always the norm. You know, you can look outside the box and find ways to break through the system. Like, you don't have to be a slave to the system for your life. You know, you can change, especially being born into what probably most people listening to this is upper middle class Australia. Yeah,
it's like, as our sister says, who's like a public school teacher that is just amazing, like head of English and a lot smarter than all of us are. And she's just like, yeah, Ben, keep saying that shit from your upper middle class position. She's like, fuck you, you know what I mean? She's like, yeah, privilege. That's what she says. But that's cool, like we are, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, we are a product of our environment.
The last one that changed my world for massively the better was like anxiety. And I don't want to go into it heaps, and I don't want to go into like the darkness of it for me, but I felt like I suffered like a lifetime of suffering in 2 years. Like, that's honestly how it felt. It was that intense. But because that suffering was so intense, sometimes I wish people would suffer faster, as bad as that is to say. Because if anyone went through what I felt like I was going through with mine and your type of mindset, you would recover. Like, no matter how dark it felt, I'm grateful for it looking back now. At the time, I was like, fuck, I'm just like a shadow of myself here. But in reality, that brought me to yoga, to meditation, to daily morning routines, to cold baths, to cutting out relationships that were toxic and adding positive ones in, to figuring out what my values were and living them, to making a plan for myself and my future based on what I wanted. Because until I had that, I was still doing the property plan as, let's just buy 10, let's hold them for 20 years, sell half of them, and then in 20 years I'll be free. When I had the anxiety, I'm like, I cannot keep doing this. I'm going to figure out a way to do it in 5.
Yeah.
I sold 6 properties. I've replaced them with these dual income ones, which I love, that are still going to get me the capital growth. And that changed everything for me. Like, I just don't drink anymore unless it's like a really fun time. Like, I just don't binge eat really shitty foods because I hate the way that I feel the next day, and I hate the way that it spikes my anxiety. Like, I eat more regularly because when you're not eating, it can flick you into flight mode. Like, I don't do the super late nights multiple times a week because I know that the next day it's going to put me into a different state. And all of that is self-care. I don't
awareness as well
believe or listen to the voices in my head anymore, because everyone's got an internal chatter, and most of the time as a human it's survival and not kind. And it's like, that's not who I am, that's just chatter. It's like, that is changing everything.
The average person has something like 50,000 thoughts a day. I was reading this book once called The Untethered Soul, and they're talking about this inside chatter. And he's like, what if you listen? Like, why do you listen to that voice in your mind when it is completely 100% of the time always on the fence? It never chooses one side. It's always going between two different arguments. Like,
it's never too good or too bad.
It's never consistent. And it's like, why would you listen to this voice that's in your head? And it's like, you are not the voice in your head. And what it talks about is trying to find that place where you're observing the voice in your head and the outside world. And
if you can learn to observe yourself, not just the world, and become the observer in your own life, like, everything changes because there's no attachment to anything, but there's full attachment and presence to everything because you know that that's the only thing that matters.
But yeah, we're true believers in the fact that everything happens for a reason. And, you know, at the time, that would have been the worst thing
I'm so stoked it
on
happened.
the planet. But,
I'm
you know,
so happy I went through
you
it.
say you're not an optimist and then you talk about that. I'm like, that is optimistic personality. That is an optimistic view of the world for sure. Like, I witnessed that. I was, you know, next to Lisa, probably the closest person to you throughout that time. And I saw everything, and, you know, I would never wish it upon my worst enemy. And to know that you can come back to who you are today and have this awareness and be able to coach other people through their mental issues and things like that, it's a beautiful thing, bro.
What I would say to everyone is that every single person is struggling and hurting, whether you think you are or you're not. And it's like, that's okay. And accepting that is cool. And then don't be afraid, like, to go get the help. Because I went and saw the GP. I got the referral and found an amazing, amazing psychologist. And then he stopped doing it. And I unfortunately didn't get a great second one, but that's cool. Like, that's life, right? Like, you've got to find your space. But having someone who can observe your thoughts and feelings with true skill sets that are legally recognized to be able to help is a game changer. And then taking care of yourself and being softer on yourself and just knowing that the way that you are now, if it's really hurting, isn't how you have to be is so important. Like,
definitely,
you can come through it, and I'm so stoked I have, because life is better on the other side. There's still moments, weeks of anxiety, but it's not months of like, I don't want to get out of bed right now to face my day type shit. And if you're there, I promise you it can get better, and it will.
Definitely.
With the work though, you've got to actually, the same as what we do with property is what I did with my mental health. You need to show up and do the work, and you need to accept that there's an issue there and be open to fixing it. And when you get good coaching from your psych, like, do the work. You don't go pay a PT $100 an hour to not work out with them and talk about it. But people pay $200 an hour to a psychologist and don't go and do anything after. It's like
crazy.
But, you know, I'm fortunate that I did the work, and so many people I know have.
And
game
it works.
changer. It works.
Yeah, the work works. Beautiful. Well, the last thing that I really wanted to talk about in my life that was a game changer, and, you know, it's a bit of a weird one, I guess, but it's surfing for myself. And I guess you could call it just a hobby. You know, I think for other people, you know, it doesn't have to be surfing. But for me, finding that passion that's completely not financially related, that's, you know, not about anybody else but myself, where I can just go and be by myself, be with my own thoughts. The beautiful thing about surfing is I am connected to nature, and I am in the ocean, and it is super cleansing. But having this place that I can always go to, that's always going to keep me safe and keep me calm and get me back to flow state is amazing. And surfing's always been that for me, especially when the going gets tough. Like, just having that outlet that I can go to know that it's going to make things better. That is an external thing, because, you know, sometimes it can be difficult to just work through those internal battles, and to have that external thing that I go to that can connect me to Mother Nature, that can connect me to myself.
Love it.
Is epic. And, you know, I do feel sorry for people that don't have a hobby, because you just need that place where you can go to, and then that thing's always going to have your back. Like, surfing's always got my back. No matter what, no matter how bad I feel. Like, I always, when I step into the water and then when I come back in, I always feel better than when I went in there.
True.
So
let's go for a surf.
Yeah, we totally should. Hey, if I didn't have such a busy arvo, I'd be in. But, you know, surfing for me is a game changer. It keeps me in the present moment. It keeps me within myself. It allows me to connect, and it allows me to let go of all of those pressures that I put on myself, or things that are affecting the way that I'm feeling at any given time. And, you know, I've incorporated so many other things like yoga and you know, exercise and all of these different things into my life, because I never want to be able to do that. Like, I want to be that old wrinkly white haired guy that struggles to get up on his surfboard at 80 years of age, because I just can never see myself not being in the ocean and not having that connection and that ability to just be 100,000% in the present moment. Because if you're not while you're surfing, then you have a crappy time.
For sure. And it's so funny you say that. Like, now that I'm a bit older, I do yoga and train to be able to surf longer.
Yeah.
It's like the reason for all of that other stuff that also makes me feel good is for that one thing that I want to do for way longer than people in my dad's generation could, because their bodies weren't set up for it. It's just crazy.
Thanks, Kelly Slater, for paving the wave there, mate. Paving the way there, mate.
Paving the waves there.
Don't pave the waves.
He's like the pinnacle of like figuring it out to me.
Yeah.
In terms of like how the physical body can function so well. And like there's dudes that are 60 and 70 that move like 30-year-olds do. It's just like, it depends what life you want to create.
For sure.
The last little one I wanted to add was just the big thing that's changed for me is 3.5 years ago, I read Secret Life of Real Estate and Banking. And then for the first time as an investor, actually made a plan. And all I've had to do for 3 years is work that plan through. And now that I have that simplicity, it's like every couple of years I might do one little thing that in 15 years will change everything. Takes all the pressure off. It's no longer investing for me. It's a property business that I run. And that property business is set up in an automated, process-oriented way that just produces cash flow for life. And that is how I see it now. And it's like the sooner you get to the point where property is not emotional, but it is fun and it is like sexy and it is fun to renovate and build stuff. But it's a business that you are taking your active income in your life and turning into a passive one so that you can be the best version of yourself with choices down the line. Man, like that is the game changer. When you've got a plan for your future, you stop living out there, because anxiety is a result of living in the future. Like, and you know, if you don't have a plan, then you're constantly stressing about how you're going to do it. Where Simon and I are like, yeah, that's where we want to be. Cool. This is the one thing we have to do this year. I'll think about that one thing when I'm ready to do it. I don't carry that around with me all the time like I used to. It's just like, sweet, one easy thing that links to my big thing, done.
Exactly.
Back into the present, live the moment and enjoy it.
And just checking in once a year on that long-term plan as well, and just, you know, is this still in line with my values? Is this still my goal? And then, okay, well, what needs to be done next? Let's do that.
Did I do it? Yes. No. Okay.
I don't think it's been a no for you.
Yeah, I mean, I normally hit my targets, but these days, like, I just have 2 or 3 goals a year. And if I'm not vibing on one, I just get rid of it. Like where in the old days, it was like, oh, you've got to do everything. It's like, nah, you just do the 2 or 3 things that will change everything. And then everything works out because of that. But I've loved this. This is a cool chat.
Yeah, thanks. If you've made it this far through, thanks for listening to our stories. You know, to you that they may not feel like much, but I'm sure that there's things in your life that have had a massive impact on the person that you are today, and all of these things have had a massive impact on me, and without all of them I wouldn't be who I am today, and I'm pretty stoked of the person that I am today, to be honest, and I want to just continue to get better and continue to be better and do better and help more people, and I'm glad that I've got this platform to be able to do that, and you know, the business as well, to be able to help, like, actually help people do shit.
So sick. It's like something you just said is just so powerful. Like, I don't think there's anything else I could want in life, or my parents could want for me, than to be happy with who you are. It's like, if you can figure out like whatever makes you feel like you, and then do it. And you know, there's parts of both of our jobs, don't get us wrong, that are like really fucking boring or hard. And that's cool. Like, don't like think that like we've got it all figured out over here type vibe. It's just, you know, through those little painful things like sorting out finance that neither Simon or I like to do, we just want to get on with building our like property portfolio. It's like, that's cool. Like, these things happen. Detach yourself from them. Like, Simon's having a hard time with finance at the moment. It's like, because of all the mental health work you've done and spirituality work you've done, it's like, you know, yes, caught up in it for a moment. Remove yourself, observe it. I'm not in control of it. What can I control? Getting the guy the documents and talking to a few. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it wasn't meant to be.
Exactly.
And when you start living like that, everything starts opening up as a possibility.
Definitely. But yeah, thanks so much for listening, guys.
Cheers, guys. Appreciate it. Thumbs up if it's on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. If it's on the podcast, 5-star review. I feel like
We've
worked
earned
this
it.
one. Love you guys and can't wait to catch up soon. Cheers.